We're making some start-sit calls next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm here with Dave Richard, and we are getting ready for Week 2. Dave, we were talking before the show. I'd like to say Week 1 didn't count because I went 5-10 in Week 1. I hope things went better for you in Week 1, and I hope things go better for me in Week 1. And we'll start with one that I got very wrong last week because I started Sky Moore in multiple leagues, and I didn't really get many points for that. Did I get any points for that? Did he get half
points
a point?
Per targets?
No points per targets. It was a pretty rotten points per routes league. Sky Moore was pretty good, but other than that, so we'll start off there. Start or sit any Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver in Week 2, and frankly, can you see any wide receivers here being worth using in the next month?
I think in a month's time, we'll have a better idea of what the value of these wide receivers actually is. For now, it's hands off. Kadarius Toney is outside of my top 50. I believe that Sky Moore is also outside of the top 50.
I don't have any of them in my top 50. I think I've got 3, maybe 4. Marquez Valdez-Scantling might have snuck in my top 60.
Yeah,
but I've got,
and I don't even feel comfortable with that guy.
Absolutely not. No,
this is a mess. And Travis Kelce hasn't been ruled out yet, and you know that you're not going to feel good starting those guys if Kelce plays. I feel like let's just do a start sit for the Chiefs offense. Start Patrick Mahomes, start Travis Kelce, sit everybody else.
Yeah, that's the end of the segment. That's the end of the show.
We're done. Good night, everybody. FFT in a minute 45.
All right, one other one I want to ask you about. We got a couple more, but one specifically, Kenneth Gainwell has been ruled out for Thursday Night Football. He suffered a rib injury in the opener. Not a great sign for his chances to remain the lead back if he got hurt in Week 1, but we'll tackle that one next week, I guess. But here's the question. Are you starting DeAndre Swift against the Minnesota Vikings in Week 2?
As a flex in PPR, I'd consider him. Now, remember, if we're talking about a full PPR league, you're probably going to have some wide receivers that you'd rather have. And I'll pull up my rankings and double check which wide receivers that I would start ahead of DeAndre Swift. Their names, Cortland Sutton, Michael Thomas, Romeo Doubs. I'd start Puka Nacua over DeAndre Swift. I'm buying in him a little bit, but some receivers that I have behind him, these are guys that don't have a lot of upside at this point in time. Josh Reynolds, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Juju Smith-Schuster. In cases like those, Brandon Cooks is behind him. I'll roll with DeAndre Swift. I like that the coaching staff is talking about him. They don't want him to go to waste. They know that he's an explosive receiver. He looked explosive on the field. He just didn't get a lot of touches. Without Gainwell there, you know exactly who's going to be playing on passing downs for Philadelphia. And this is a pretty good matchup for him against the Vikings. Minnesota on the road. I don't know if their run defense is really good just because they shut down Rashad White in week number 1. I think you could see maybe around 12 to 15 PPR points for DeAndre Swift more if he scores. That's pretty good.
Yeah, one name you mentioned, Brandon Cooks. He's dealing with a knee injury and he did not practice on Wednesday, so that's one to keep an eye on moving forward.
Going to make him easy to sit if he doesn't practice and doesn't play.
Another one that you mentioned, Puka Nacua, probably in most leagues the biggest waiver wire ad of Week 2. I've got him as a top 30 wide receiver. How high do you have Puka Nacua ranked?
Let me double check. I was looking at my top 200. He wasn't that high there. He is 35th for me, Chris. And this is a 49ers defense that I think is good all the way around. What we saw from the Rams in Week 1, awesome. And really, it's Matthew Stafford that made Puka Nacua great, if you ask me. The protection was good. That's part of the reason why Kyron Williams was playing, by the way, was because he can protect Matthew Stafford. But this is a much different beast in the 49ers defense compared to the Seahawks defense, which, by the way, was without one of their top cover corners in the game. I'd be a little hesitant to start Puka Nacua, but I could also envision him getting 10 targets, 6 catches, 80 yards. Could he get something around the Josh Reynolds game from Week 1 with a couple more catches mixed in? Yeah, I think he can. And that puts him in the flex range.
Yeah, the 49ers were actually, I believe, bottom 5 in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers last season, which was weird because they had a very good offense, but teams were playing from behind. They had to pass against them. I think we'll see a lot of throwing from the Rams this week, which should help Puka Nacua. One last start-sit question I'm sure a lot of people are wondering about. I think it's an easy call personally, but I want to know what you think about Jahmyr Gibbs heading into Week 2.
Oh, don't even worry about what happened in week one. He gets a pass. You talked about the week one pass at the beginning of today's show. I think he gets a pass, Chris. You look at what he's capable of doing. You saw the speed out there. He should have scored a touchdown. He slipped on a play where he had a clear path to the end zone for a red zone touchdown. It was inside the 10. So I think that he's going to get more work. Dan Campbell's talked about him getting more work. We've heard from a source that he's going to get more work. We're starting Jahmyr Gibbs as a number 2 fantasy running back. Easy start over DeAndre Swift.
Agree with that one. He is a top 24 running back for me still. Last week, I did have him a top 15. I moved him down a little bit because, he didn't get the passing game role that we hoped for. David Montgomery ran more routes than him. That wasn't what we were hoping to see. But I think as the season goes on, look, Dan Campbell has not been shy about it. He said, we're going to use him more and more starting this week. We're going to get the ball in his hands. I think we're going to see that. I still like David Montgomery. I still think he's a viable RB2 moving forward, but Jahmyr Gibbs looked the part. He's going to get the opportunities. Don't overreact. Don't sit him for week 2. That's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll see you tomorrow.